right. Hi, everybody. I want to welcome you to the NCGIS conference and welcome you specifically to this session, which is on measuring socioeconomic balance in schools. Before I actually turn it over to our presenters, I want to introduce myself. I'm Elizabeth Daniel. I'm going to be monitoring the chat window. So feel free during the presentation to chat us your questions. We're going to save about 5 minutes at the end of the presentation for our presenters, Bill and Rob, to answer those questions. And I did want to let you know we are trying to give you 5 minutes so that you can make your next session after this. And I think without anything else, I'm going to turn it over to Rob and Bill to introduce themselves and their topic. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Hi, my name's Rob Siwick. I work in the Office of Student Assignment, GIS group for the Wake County Public School System. And today I'll be joined by Bill Schroyer from Wake County Long Range Planning to present our topic on measuring socioeconomic balance in schools. A couple of facts about our organizations. Wake County and Wake County Schools are not the same organization, but WCPSS does receive some of its funding from Wake County, along with state and federal funding. What our organizations do share are geographic boundaries and the residents within that we both serve. Because of those shared boundaries and residents, we work together to help improve education, health, and well-being of our residents. And what we will be showing you today is one of our collaborations, and that is through the Wake County Social Equity Program. This community-based analysis relies on US Census data to make informed decisions about our residents. WCPSS relies on the Economic Health Index from this program to measure the socioeconomic status of our schools. Now I'd like to introduce Bill Schroyer from Wake County to talk a little more about the social equity program.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Schroyer. I'm a senior GIS analyst at Wake County Long Range Planning. I've been there for over 16 years working with various projects. This collaboration in particular has been really good because it gives us kind of the purpose of why we started this social equity program. We started this in order to assemble and analyze the socioeconomic and demographic data that we use in several different capacities from the US Census Bureau in order to be able to identify other data that overlay within the county. And we decided on using the American Community Survey data, which is released every year as a 5-year average. And what we wanted to be able to do with it is support a broader audience, a lot of civic engagement through these data, and an effective resource allocation for some of our services within Wake County. So a little background, we started this kind of right after the release of the 2010 census. And what we were asked to do by the county manager's office is find a focused approach to funding resources around a specific area for some funding. It happened to be a place called Crosby Garfield Center, and we did some analysis to find out how we could incorporate a lot of different data pieces that come from the socioeconomic demographics from the census. And the research provided things like urban hardship studies that were done by the Rockefeller Institute, and LA Health Atlas had something called an index, which was intriguing in how they combined multiple pieces of data to get a better understanding of all of the components within the geographies. So what we ended up landing on here was the US Census block groups. Very important distinction here that there, in census terms and geographies, there are the blocks, which are the smallest unit of geography, the block groups, and then the tracts. Blocks make up block groups make up census tracts. However, what happens here is that the majority of the information that's provided at the lowest community level is by block group. We have 455 of them in Wake County as of the 2010 decennial census. And one of the other benefits that I like about using the census block groups is that they have a threshold by population size. So on quick glance, you can get an understanding of the density of your geographic unit by the size of those geographies. And that helps a lot because, you know, a lot of the questions around density can be answered just upon a glance to see where things are occurring. So we chose several different pieces of data that were assembled based on the request and some of the research. They were things like poverty, cost burden, food stamps, age dependency, and all of these to understand the vulnerabilities within the communities that we were identifying by block group. So quickly, we identified this economic health index. Rob, are we skipping slides? I feel like we skipped a few. Yeah, go back. No. Okay. So, so some of the components for these data that we identified were things around cost burden, for example, which is directly out of the census data. Percent spending 30% of your income or more on your rent, percent spending 30% of your income on a mortgage, percent food stamps, households on food stamps, the median household income, and the federal poverty level ratio of 100% to 200%, which is around in Wake County from about $26,000 per household of 4 to about 44,000 household. The other index that we created was based around 5 additional indicators, and they were unemployment as defined by the census of 16 and over who are unemployed in the civilian labor force, age dependency, which was a combination of under 18 and over 64. Low educational attainment would be those who have less than a high school diploma, age 25 and over. Housing vacancy, which was the number of vacant houses versus or unoccupied houses at the block group level. And then our actual poverty level, which is considered up to 100% of the federal poverty limit. These were what were combined in the index, but just important to know that there are other components that we can apply as kind of secondary levels once we have these index created, and that race equity being one of those. So here you get an idea of what this final mapping looks like in the index. So on the one side, the community vulnerability, as I described before, has, it's more of a community-based approach where a lot of the indicators like vacancy, for example, are more about the community level. And then compared to the economic health, which the indicators that we used from the census are more of a household level approach. So the way we went about doing this in order to create an index was to calculate the percentages for each of our characteristics by block group, and then sorting them from highest to lowest. So the highest percentage of those categories had the most people in those conditions. and then they were scored, each of them were scored from a 1 through 455, 455 being the highest, and then the scores were combined and re-sorted and re-ranked 1 through 455 again, where 455 was the highest percentages of each characteristic, and thereby kind of the most vulnerable in those block groups. So overall, the way we use this social equity program on several different capacities, we've compared it with the social determinants of health. We've compared it along the lines of what they were calling the CDC 500 cities. And we've also used it currently in COVID response, as well as supporting the Board of Commissioner goals for prioritizing resources. So here are some of the continuing support agencies that we are still working with: the Population Health Task Force, Comprehensive Food Security Plan, public schools, and some of our other community partners. And then internal agencies like our Wake County Human Services. Well, a lot of our grants now are asked for identifying socioeconomic data around vulnerable communities, environmental services, and as far as some of our plans, our comprehensive plan, our parks and rec planning, and our affordable housing plan, all implemented characteristics identified through the social equity program. So to take it a step further, what we did in order to allow for some interaction, which everybody can access off of our wakegov.com site under Social Equity Atlas, I took the two indexes that we created, the community vulnerability and the economic health, and I combined those scores and re-ranked those 1 through 455 to get an overall view of what the equity is in both of those components. And we provided that through a social equity reference app. You can add our other data on there, but it gives us a quick look at where some of our vulnerable communities are, and then we can add additional layers on top of there to get an idea of why they're vulnerable.
Okay, thanks, Bill. So when we talk about socioeconomic balance with the school system, we're referring to socioeconomic status, or SES for short. Currently, WCPSS has been focused on the economic health of its student population to help balance our schools. When we talk about the SES balance from an economic standpoint, our goal is to move away from strictly measuring income to measuring wealth. And the EHI Economic Health Index helps us with that measure because of those 5 indicators that Bill had described. Why does that matter to K through 12 education? SES has been correlated with an individual's academic skills development, academic achievement, work and life outcomes, and overall psychological and behavioral well-being. We've already incorporated the EHI scores into our magnet school application progress. Magnet schools are schools with specialized courses and curriculum, and the term magnet refers to how the schools draw in students from across the district. In other words, we magnetize schools to diversify the student body population, and this enables students to learn and see things from different perspectives. The SES school data for students from pre-K to grade 13 is vital to our collaboration efforts with the county, municipalities, and other agencies for students inside and outside the classroom. And all these applications help create a more equitable, balanced school system. Before I discuss the way we use the ACS data, I'll give you a little history. EHI at the block group level is a major shift from the previous method and measurement of SES data we use previously. And a lot of schools have used this traditionally, called FRL data, which is free and reduced lunch. And that data refers to the National School Lunch Program, which the USDA sets guidelines based on family income for eligibility into that program. So why the switch? FRL data is collected to provide those students in need with free or reduced price lunch. It's obviously a great program. Was it created to measure the socioeconomic balance of a school system? No. And there are several reasons why it's not a good measure of economic health. One being access to that data is extremely limited, even within the school district. It's private information. It's not public. It has to be reported to the federal government with very strict guidelines. Number two, all it measures is the family's income, and that's self-reported to begin with. So you don't get all the information that you might want income-wise from all the students, because they don't have to give that information if they don't want to. And it doesn't measure wealth, like I had mentioned earlier. It measures household income. So the Economic Health Index provides a stronger measure of SES for our residents. For that reason, we've incorporated Wake County's Economic Health Index in our efforts to improve equitable, balanced schools for our students. And how is SES a measurement of wealth versus strict income? Well, these indicators combined in the Economic Health Index are strong measures of overall wealth versus income when it comes to measuring that economic health. For instance, if a family income is well above the median household income for the county, but more than 30% of that income goes to rent or mortgage, it increases the level of economic instability for that family. So it's a better measure than pure income for that reason alone. With a switch to economic health, we're also viewing our families through a different geography. Wake County Schools has its own geographies to group students together called base attendance areas. And those are essentially comprised of parcels. And each student in each grade level has its own unique base attendance area. So students also reside in a specific block group, which helps us identify the economic health of students by their block group. And unlike our base attendance areas and other draw areas that we change annually, the block groups provide us with a stable, uniform representation of neighborhoods for 10 years that share the same socioeconomic traits. Here's some of the data we use for this analysis, and you'll see how it's used in the following slides. Here we have the block groups in Wake County with the economic health values. Only difference here, purple being the block groups with the highest economic health, and green the lowest. This is an example of our student geocode. We have a point for each of our enrolled students in the county, and that gives us some extremely valuable data at a very granular scale. Since this is private data, aggregation to the block group level not only removes any privacy issues, it also allows us to share publicly. So we apply the Economic Health Index scores to the student and organize it by the school each student attends, and by base attendance area of residence. So in this image, you can see we have color coded the students based on their EHI score. These are our base attendance areas throughout the county. This is elementary only, and there are 118 elementary schools. The base attendance area you reside in is your base school, which means a student will attend this school unless they request to go to one of our application schools. They're non-contiguous, and I'll show you how that impacts the analysis. Here's an example of one of our base attendance areas. This is the Swift Creek Elementary base attendance area, overlaid on top of the economic health block groups. And those numbers you see are the scores calculated through Bill's methodology. So you can see Swift Creek lies in some of the most economic healthy block groups in the county, and some of the least healthy. You have number 1 and 450 right in that same base attendance area. Here are those students, again, where they reside by block group, but also who resides in that base attendance area by score. So in order to measure the health of a base attendance area, we will take all those students that reside within the Swift Creek, and we'll get an average economic health score for that base attendance area. So with that average, we see that the economic health of Swift Creek's base attendance area is somewhere between the 60th and 80th percentile of all the base attendance areas in the county, which is high. It's on the higher end. And our goal here is to use this information to balance schools. Here's an image of all the elementary base attendance areas by the base SES average, Swift Creek being this one here. So as I said earlier, you can attend the base school you live in. You can also attend other schools. You can apply to other schools. We have magnet draw areas. We have calendar application areas. So a school is not always comprised of everyone in its base. And that helps us balance those schools by allowing students from other areas to attend Swift Creek. And if we take all the students that actually go to the school and look at that economic health average, we're bringing that school back down to about the middle of the economic health. So we're trying to balance that school out, and we did a pretty good job with Swift Creek. Here are all the base attendance areas by school average, and that is a lot different than the base, because of that reason that you don't have to go to your school that you're assigned to. So that's, how do we use that data? We assign different bases, magnet, calendar, draw areas to different schools to find that balance. So we don't want schools to be on either end of that spectrum. We're trying to bring them towards a balanced economic health indicator or score. Of course, transportation becomes a factor with the size of our county, and it's sometimes impossible to balance this way, and we need new ways to find balance. And that's where collaboration with the county and other organizations comes into factor, because we can, instead of moving students around, we can work at the neighborhood level to improve these improve the neighborhoods rather than move people around the schools. And some of our next steps is to continue to use this for magnet assignment prioritization. We want to be able to use this information to draw areas for our zones, and then explore different data sets in addition to just economic health. We also have to prepare for the updates to census data, and I'll let Bill talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, just real quick, our 2020 decennial census timeline looks like there's going to be data released within the census geographies in September 30th, 2021. And there will be new and additional block groups and census tracts because the county has grown so much in terms of population that we've had to add quite a few new ones. So stay tuned. We'll have more information on that as probably the summer goes on.
Right. Bill and Rob, okay, yeah, I was sorry to interrupt. Yeah, you read my mind. So thank you so much. There's a ton of great information in this presentation, and we do have some questions. Our next session is actually a break, so we might go a minute or two over. But I'm going to go ahead and start with this first question. Basically, Stacy says, this is great information and analysis. Where can I go to learn more about all of this? Websites, books, whatever, question mark?
Yeah, I have some, I can share this as a PDF later on. It's got some of the data we use. It has access to Bill's application, information on alternative measures. And you can also reach out to us at this information here. Be happy to share.
Right. That sounds great. So we have another one from Hannah Williams. Has this data been used to solve any specific problems recently?
Bill, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, well, we're using the socioeconomic data, the social equity atlas, vulnerability data to determine whether or not our vaccine distribution is being provided equitably throughout the county, as well as our testing earlier on in the year. So that's kind of, very recent. We've also used it for a lot of planning purposes for funding different projects and resources, grants in particular.
Yeah, and we use it right now in the school district for, as I said, magnet draw areas where we'll have a school with a very low economic health score, and we will allow students with a higher priority in those high economic health areas to apply to those first, and they have a higher priority, so we can balance those schools.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. It's from Sierra Davis. Her question is, with looking at this data, what are your own ideas about diversifying schools economically? Do you think non-contiguous space attendance areas are beneficial?
Transportation's a huge factor with that. We're a giant county, giant school district, and it's difficult to send students far away from their closest school, and we do that the best we can, but it's difficult. So, this also opens up a way, the dialogue about alternative schools, which we've started to put together, and there's Southeast Raleigh Elementary is one of those schools where it's a neighborhood school, and there's a lot of more benefits for children in that neighborhood to attend that school, and starting at the school and neighborhood level rather than shifting kids is one of the things we look at a lot.
All right, everyone, I'm afraid that we are out of time. We do have a couple of additional questions, so I want to make sure that you guys in the chat line get down the contact information, and I'm sure Bill and Rob would be more than willing to talk with you guys about those questions offline. I want to thank you guys for coming. I do want to let you know we have a break from 2:30 to 2:45, but there is also a vendor demo on enhancing streets that's starting now if you're interested. Thank you very much, and I hope the rest of your conference goes well.